When you're wrong, you got to eat crow. And I was wrong about Thunderbolts. This was a movie I just didn't understand. I was like, okay, so this is Marvel's answer to Suicide Squad with like B-list characters that no one really knows. And a lot of them have been introduced in TV. Who's going to see this movie with the past like few years of Marvel? Like this thing is going to be a disaster. And lo and behold, like this movie's not a disaster. And it's actually like one of my more favorite Marvel projects of really the past like 5+ years. I actually think Thunderbolts is quite competent and quite interesting and quite good in most of its runtime. And I really like this movie, which we're going to get into of why this movie is successful and where it varies from other less successful Marvel movies of the past few years. But my thesis on this is just, it comes down to this. If you want to make a good movie, having a good story, having good characters, and having good special effects, that's really all you need for these movies. And in this case, I thought the characters were good. I thought the story was good. And I thought the special effects were good in a way that Marvel hasn't had good special effects in like a few years. So like it had all of those qualities. And yeah, surprisingly, if you just deliver on that, you can make a good movie. And that's what I want to explore today. What makes these characters work? How does the transition from TV to film affect the storytelling? And does this film offer anything new within the confines of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? And let's just kind of explore this first one, because this is a character-driven movie, and this movie would not be successful if you did not buy into / care about the characters. What makes Thunderbolts work is you buy into a majority of the characters. There is a lot of really talented up-and-coming actors in this movie, and this is a showcase of them. You have Florence Pugh, who has become a huge star since her original appearance in Black Widow. You've then also had other people have emerged. Wyatt Russel, the son of Kurt Russell, is in this movie. He appeared as U.S. agent in the Falcon and Winter Soldier show. He is somebody that has been making a name for himself in Hollywood. You have Pullman, who was Bob in Top Gun Maverick. He also plays a character named Bob in this movie. He's another guy who's been kind of making his name for the past few years. Then you even have like reoccurring characters within the MCU. Sebastian Stan is in this movie as Bucky Barnes. Sebastian Stan coming off this incredible 2024 with A Different Man in The Apprentice, which just showcased how talented of an actor Sebastian Stan is, and I think really added another level to his complexity as an actor that he's able to showcase to a degree in this movie. Then you also have David Harbour from Black Widow reappearing in this movie. That is to say that like those are, what is it? I think 5 really strong actors who are kind of at the forefront of this movie. So you've cast a lot of really talented people in it. You're capturing them in a moment of time in their fame where they're not A-list yet, but people are starting to recognize them. People are starting to really dig them. People like Florence Pugh, like they're really gaining a new level of notoriety. Like you're capturing these actors at the right moment, and they all are here to serve a purpose. Pullman is the heart of this movie as Bob. He is the emotional core of this movie, which we'll get into that subtext in a moment. Wyatt Russel and David Harbour are just kind of the comedic forces of this movie. A lot of their one-liners really hit, especially with the David Harbour character, who I thought was quite funny and quite a really nice flavor to this movie that just added a lot of comedic sensibilities that I thought a majority of his jokes just really land. You then bring Florence Pugh, who's probably the best actor of this bunch, and she just grounds the film. She is such a steadfast presence at the center of this film. You feel every emotion that this character has. I think she is perfectly closed off. She is able to capture everything that I think Scarlett Johansson did well with the Black Widow character, and now giving this as a new layer as Natasha's sister. Like, I think Florence Pugh is kind of excellent in this movie. And then you also have Sebastian Stan, who really, he is not somebody who's like groundbreaking as an actor in this movie. But what Sebastian Stan does as a presence in this movie is he just offers legitimacy to this cast. He offers the Marvel, if you will, prestige, quote unquote, in it, which is essentially like, he gives you that extra flavor of something the fans like, something that the moviegoers like, and is able to just be like, oh, okay, we're in safe hands because Sebastian Stan is here as a big presence in this movie. And he's been good before in these movies for a long time. Thunderbolts follows the story of CIA Director Valentina Allegra de Fonte, who is under investigation by the U.S. government and decides she needs to cut all loose ends by killing her anti-hero mercenaries. When they discover her plot, they also discover a test experiment of hers known only as Bob, who's of great importance to Valentina, and that really kicks off the story of this movie. So yes, this movie is quite familiar. You've seen movies like this, and I think this movie shares a lot in similarity to Guardians of the Galaxy. Of all the MCU projects, I think that is what this was. Kind of a mismatch of losers who all have to come together, have these kind of murky passes, and rise above it and become the heroes at the end of the day. This is also first and foremost a movie about isolation and trauma and people learning to cope and move forward from their pain. Like, that is explicitly at the forefront of this movie. And it's like the thematic weight of this movie in a way that I don't think we've seen a lot of MCU films. There have been MCU films that certainly explore these. This movie, like, quite literally personifies trauma and pain and discomfort and all of that as its kind of antagonist, which we can talk about the highs and lows of that in a moment. But again, I think it all just kind of works well together. And I think it's really centered around, I want to spend some more time on this actor. It's Pullman as the Bob character, a character with a severe mental health ailment that is kind of the driving force of this movie. And again, you have to buy this character for this movie to work, and you do. I think you buy this relationship that he has, especially the chemistry that he has with the Florence Pugh character of Yelena. I think they have a great back and forth. There's kind of this protection element that Yelena is doing. Like, she has a kindness and softness to Bob that she doesn't really have to a lot of other people in her life. And I just think their moments together really work and really shine and really come forth of what this movie is trying to be, which is helping one another. That is a central core idea of Thunderbolts. And you get this with all the characters. And it's interesting how these characters kind of coexist with each other, all coming together. They all have their own beefs. They all have their own vendettas against one another. And it is kind of this mismatch of personalities now forced to work together. I find that fun. I think the humor of the first act really works. And this film has to do some table setting where it's just like, I think this film does a really good job of assuming you haven't seen the properties these other characters are from. Like, if you don't know who U.S. agent / John Walker, who's played by Wyatt Russel in this movie, is, this movie gives you everything you need to know about him, really, from Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is he's essentially this Captain America that kind of goes rogue on national TV and ends up killing somebody with Captain America's shield and causes like this incident like in the show. That's really all you need to know about this character. And there's like some family dynamics which they get into in this movie. Same thing with Yelena, like they explain it's Black Widow's sister. I think they kind of assume audiences saw this movie. Same with Red Guardian. Ghost, they kind of just briefly mention like how she became Ghost as seen in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Again, not something you really need to know. They explain her powers well enough in it. And then Bob's obviously a new character introduced in it. And then Valentina, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, like, yes, she's been in Hawkeye. Yes, she's been in Black Widow. Yes, she's been in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. All you really need to know about her in this movie is she's the CIA director who's like under investigation by the U.S. government, which they kind of just get that out of the way at the beginning of the film. Again, they don't need to do a ton of the, well, this is this person's backstory and this is this, and they had this connection with this character and all this. Like, it's kind of straightforward. They get it over with pretty quickly, and they kind of reintroduce them into this film. It reminded me a lot of how 2012's The Avengers movie written by Joss Whedon, like how he does it, where it's like, okay, we're assuming a good amount of you have probably seen Thor, Captain America, the First Avenger, like all of that. But just in case you haven't, like, here's just kind of a background on these characters real quick. Like, I think this movie does it in a pretty efficient way that it didn't bother me. It didn't feel like overly long exposition. And I liked it enough for what it is. But the first act is probably the slowest of it. And I think the two following acts are the strongest. Like I said, though, I think it's so much due to the chemistry of all these characters. I think the main actors of this film stand out. I don't think the female characters outside of Florence Pugh are particularly great in this. Pretty underwritten. Like I said, I think Yelena is the strongest of these characters. The Valentina character played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, I don't know if it's just because I think Dreyfus is slightly miscast or if it's just this character is a little underwritten. I compare it to someone like Amanda Waller played by Viola Davis in the DC universe, and I'm just like, that's kind of the role that I think is more fitting for this type of storytelling being done by MCU. And it's just, I don't think Julia Louis-Dreyfus hits it, or this character is as interesting as Amanda Waller. Same thing with the other characters like Ghost and Taskmaster in this film. Like, Ghost is, I think, visually cool. Like, I think her powers in it are cool and cinematically play. And I think that's why she gets her part in this film, is because of that. Taskmaster is kind of like whatever in this film, as is the character of Mel. She plays the assistant to Dreyfus's CIA director. She is this character experiencing kind of this crisis of faith. There is this whole subplot with her and Bucky Barnes of this character kind of coming to Jesus moments throughout this film. I just don't think it worked. I didn't care enough about this character. You need this character to kind of get a few gears within this film like going, but ultimately it's a pretty underserved character. And the big thing about this movie, even though, like I said, I don't think the Julia Louis-Dreyfus character necessarily works at all times, she is the main villain of this film, but this film is far larger than that. This movie is far more thematically sound in its villain, which is essentially the villain of this movie is mental health, both thematically, but also quite literally. And that may sound silly and extremely weird if you haven't seen the movie yet, but like that is very much personified. Like mental health as a crippling villain is in this movie, and it's kind of the whole arc of the third act. I think this is a testament that I thought this worked due to the direction of Jake Schreier, who also has directed such things as Robot and Frank, and as well as the Netflix limited series Beef. Like, this is a guy who just really understands characters in like loneliness at that moment, like going through something tough and coming out of it, and that sadness and those feelings associated with trauma and pain. Same thing with the screenplay writer, Joanna Kahlo, who also wrote this. You know, her screenplay credits for TV are the show Hacks, BoJack Horseman, The Bear. Like, these are also characters in distress. Like, I think that's another thing that this does well. Thunderbolts just hires a lot of really smart people to tell this style of story, who are familiar with telling stories that are personal about people in distress and coming through that. And the idea of trauma slash pain slash mental health being like visually represented in the movie's third act is completely like integral to this movie. And it's also something that's very internal, something I don't think we can say about a lot of superhero third acts. And what it does so well and so powerfully is all about the heroes helping people. This is a story that significantly spends its third act where the heroes actually help people. One of my favorite set pieces, without spoiling it, is there is this scene where basically the city of New York is under distress, and you just see Thunderbolts, these characters, they're saving people in the streets. So you just see them doing heroic things, and it's this heroic moment, and it feels like any great superhero moment, but it's not based on punching. It's not based on outsmarting anyone. It's not this battle of wits, anything like that. It is just truly people looking out for one another, which is what this third act does. And that's also what this film does in its third act when it becomes kind of shifts. It goes into this another dimension of sorts. And again, it's just this idea of people looking out for other people. That's also not to say, like, I don't want to be like, well, Thunderbolts is all this internal, like, action, and it's all these, like, emotional moments. Like, this movie has great action. I think this movie looks good. I think it uses a lot of practical effects. They open the movie with this character of Yelena, and she just kind of drops down from this really tall building. And it's just, you see the stunt double just jump from a tall building, and the camera stays on them, and then they eventually parachute, and it's just like, yep, that's visceral, that feels real. And they do that throughout this movie. Like, there's a lot of scenes, like there's this fight scene in the desert that feels real. Like, there's this motorcycle chase scene with a character coming on in a motorcycle that's, you're like, oh, that's a real superhero moment that rings true of like Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Like, there's a lot of these in between set pieces that really make this world feel real and tangible in a way that I don't think the MCU has been hitting in. And was really impressed by this. Like, I was really happy to see this because I think when these worlds feel tangible and these characters all feel real, I think it really does do a lot to ground the superhero elements and make these stories relatable, which I think is what the MCU did so well in its first 10 years of inception. This movie puts so much emphasis on the storytelling of the Bob character. If this story doesn't work, this movie doesn't work. And that is a thing that I was really happy to see the MCU do. Like, this is a character first story, which cannot be said about really the past 5 years of the MCU. Typically, it's been the world building / multiverse first and foremost and setting up stories to come. Phase 4 and 5, I think the only films that have really been able to like be character first and then world building second, like Spider-Man No Way Home, despite obviously the multiverse playing a heavy part into it, I think that is a complete and whole Peter Parker arc. Same with Shang-Chi. Same with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and now same with Thunderbolts. And again, that isn't to say that the world building isn't important, and that's not to say Thunderbolts doesn't deliver on that. I think there's a lot of world building in it, which we'll get to in a second, but it is to say that there's a lot of other needs that need to be served, and this film does it, and it does a great job introducing new characters, reestablishing other characters, and ultimately just being a really fun, great time. Which now, let's jump into the spoilers for the last few minutes. So if you don't want to hear my spoiler thoughts, let me just say I really like Thunderbolts. This is a 4 out of 5 star movie, but now let's jump into the spoilers for anyone who wants to hear, which that's the world building that I just talked about. And I think there's 3 big parts that I want to talk about in this world building, because I think we learned 3 new things. First, the Bob character that I've been referencing and kind of been playing shy with. This is the character from the comics Sentry. He is this really powerful being that's kind of experimented on. He is this person with really severe drug addictions before he gets like this super serum, it seems like. And it basically makes him very unstable, which means he is transitioned between hero and villain. He is this character that has like this void in him, which is very literally seen within Thunderbolts. I can't pretend to know much about this character, but I do know he is quite a powerful character. It is a new flavor for the MCU to play with, and coming on the heels of what is going to be Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, like they introduced him at a very specific time. They have this character of Bob / Sentry that kind of are like unconnected. It kind of reminded me a lot of what Moon Knight did with the Oscar Isaac character. But essentially where Bob ends the story is he's powered down. He is not the Sentry, but you know he can probably unlock the Sentry character. And it is this kind of question of what can and can't Bob control, which I think is going to be a big central idea of the Doomsday / Secret Wars movie. Next part of it, which is probably the big thing, people have probably now seen it because Marvel just started saying it today for their press tour. Thunderbolts asterisks. I knew there was a reason for the asterisk, and there was. It is because this movie is actually titled The New Avengers. And like I said, this was kind of an open secret. I think a lot of us were predicting it might be the Dark Avengers or whatever it was, but a lot of people were thinking the Avengers was going to be some form of a title in this. These characters quite literally become the Avengers at the end of this film, with Julia Louis-Dreyfus basically kind of introducing them to the world as, these are your new Avengers. And then like this really great credit sequence happens where you get to see these characters like it reminded me so much, and it's obviously echoing like Beatles Mania or any of these, like you see these characters and like kind of like inserted into like famous pop culture moments. I thought it was actually a really fun end credit sequence during the cast listing. Like that really worked for me. But again, what I liked about it is it quite literally reminded me of how Iron Man, the first one, ends, where it's just like, I am Iron Man. That's kind of how this film ends, where it's just like, these are your new Avengers, cut to credits. Like that. I like that pace. I like that from Marvel. And it's like, okay, new storytelling beat. And then, of course, the post-credit scene, which we have to talk about. This takes place 14 months later. We learn that Sam Wilson and his Avengers are basically clashing with the new Avengers. There's this beef between Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes. We don't know exactly what, but Sam Wilson doesn't seem to like the idea of these new Avengers. And he's basically suing them for the copyright. Like there's this whole like kind of infighting going on between Bucky and Sam Wilson. We don't actually see Sam, but then like I said, it's the 14 months later and we see a ship crash landing. Look at the ship. You hear the music, Fantastic Four. And then you see the Four on the ship, Fantastic Four, setting it up. We all know it's coming. It's coming out this July. And it's obviously going to lead big into Doomsday. It's going to lead big into Secret Wars. And I like that. That is my favorite type of tease from the post-credit sequences. It's not the Brett Goldstein as Hercules, which may or may not come to fruition in like 5 or 10 years. Same with Harry Styles as the brother of Thanos, that might never come to fruition. It's just like, hey, this is upcoming next. You will be able to see this movie in like 2 or 3 months. That's what I like from the MCU. That's what I like when they tease Thor's hammer or Cap's shield in the phase 1. Like, it's just like, hey, here's what's coming directly next. I like that. And now you kind of know what's going on. So now you have the Fantastic Four entering. You now have the new Avengers. You're assuming you're also going to have the Avengers led by Sam Wilson, which will probably include Shang-Chi, Spider-Man, Ant-Man, all of those characters. You also know we have the X-Men coming back to this cast. Obviously, Fantastic Four, as I already mentioned. And then you're presumably, like, you might have some of the young Avengers made up of Haley Steinfeld's character, made up of Miss Marvel, all of those characters kind of come into their own. And then presumably you're going to get the OG Avengers of Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, all of them. Like, I'm assuming they're probably going to get into this movie in some way or another. But you kind of just see like, oh, huge universe. They're all building to a new group established. And I liked it. I liked it ultimately. I thought this was a really satisfying, fun movie. I would definitely watch it again. And I look forward to seeing Thunderbolts and talking about it more, if ever given the chance. With that all said, that's my review of Thunderbolts. 4 out of 5 stars for me. This was a strong entry within the MCU. And if you can now get this in Fantastic Four to land the way that I think Marvel is really hoping, I think Marvel has a lot on Fantastic Four working. I think you actually look at it and you're like, okay, maybe they're riding the ship a little bit. Like, maybe they actually have something storytelling wise. I hope they can keep on that. And that's what I want to see, because if this is the quality that we can get from Marvel and come to expect from it, I'm just happy. This is what I want this movie to be. A good, fun action movie that kept me engaged, and it isn't the dominant force of Hollywood. This isn't the only movie that they're making, but this is helping keep movie theaters and Hollywood afloat and subsidizing some of these other projects, but they're not the dominant force that this is the only thing we can make. That is exciting for me. That is what I want, and I'm so glad Thunderbolts delivered that for me. So thank you all so much for watching, and if you like this movie, make sure to like and subscribe to my channel below.